So the score of the match is 3-3 before this game. And Jan is white and Ding is black. Ding decided to play the French defense. Once again, in every game, we have a different opening after, well, this after move 1. But in most of the games, I think after move 6, we haven't seen the position again. Okay, they played the Tarish French. And here black has 3 common moves. c5, knight f6, and taking on e4. He played c5, which was the main move in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And then knight f6 took over. And now they're about the same, I guess. And the difference is white used to just take right away. And now knight f3 is at least as common. In the 70s and 80s, after taking, black would take with the pawn, but they don't do that anymore. They take with the queen. Okay, so I used to play the French, so I know theory from 35 years ago. Thanks, Jeebus. Thanks for helping, Jeebus. Okay, so he takes on d4, he takes on d4, and he plays knight f6. And usually white takes on d5, which he did. Knight takes d5. And I've seen this position, thanks Jeebus for gifting another sub. I've seen this position many times. I'm not an expert on it at all, but it seemed like what they did made a lot of sense. Like it must be just the main line. Knight 2 to f3, that makes sense. I guess the knight can go here too, but this makes more sense to me. Bishop e7, bishop c4, knight c6. And I guess both players have a choice of moves to make, but these seem like the most logical to me. Okay, now, after the trade on c6, things drip dried. Most people who aren't super sophisticated would just say, well, that's bad. And I admit it's not great. On the other hand, what black wants to do, which he did do, is fianchetto his bishop and play c5 and have a nice bishop. And in this position, in the French defense and in all French defenses, you know, his bishop has some issues. So if black can trade pieces and eventually activate his bishop and have a solid knight on d5 defended, you know, a few times, then he should be okay. And white doesn't have any center pawns. So typically when you have 3 pawns and then you have 2 open files of the center and then 3 pawns, that's not the best pawn structure for white. So this position's about equal, even though you could argue, well, those pawns are isolated and weak. I would agree that they're isolated, because they are, but they're not really weak because they can't be attacked or captured. And this pawn is going to control d4 when it goes to c5. And right now it's defending the knight on d5. So this pawn's doing a good job. Okay, and it's very difficult for white to get a passed pawn anywhere. Or, excuse me, to have some anchors in the center. You know, to put pieces in the center where they're defended by pawns, because white has no pawns in the center. So truth hurts. Okay, so that's the good and the bad. Now we'll look at the ugly. That's me. Okay, so he castled and he castled. It's very normal, solid kind of position. Queen e2. There's nothing too exciting going on. They're just putting their pieces on better squares and developing them and castling. Bishop b7. And he puts his bishop back on d3. Now, there's a few reasons for that. There's the reason you like, so I want you guys to have a good time, is queen e4 and queen h7 mate. You guys like that. The other reason is, at some point, probably after a3, I'm going to play c4 and kick the knight away. Because, you know, the knight's just sitting there being good. So bishop d3, I can attack on the king's side. I can kick your knight away. That move makes sense. Okay, queen c7. Now the knight has the f4 square, because we're defending, and we'll pick up one of white's bishops, either this one or this one. So for example, if c4, then knight f4, and then the engine actually says that's okay. Then we trade on f4, and that's also still equal. He played queen e4, which stops knight f4, because it's hanging. But that's not why it stops knight f4. It's because it's threatening mate. So if knight f4, you have a pleasant choice of winning the knight or of checkmating your opponent. I'm not sure which is better, because after you win the knight, you're threatening the queen and checkmate. And the threat is stronger than the execution, so it's not clear. Okay, now here, black has two moves that make sense, and the engine says they're both equal. So that's why the position's equal, because neither side has to walk a tightrope to maintain equality. Both sides can do sort of what they want, and it's equal. You don't have to follow a certain path. And if you play g6 or knight f6, they're both fine. At this point in time, Ding decided to gain a tempo against the queen, knight f6, and with his knight not here anymore, he can play c5 and open up his bishop. Okay, the queen went to h4, and he played c5 and opened up his bishop. Okay, now an interesting line that didn't happen, and I'll put the analysis board on, is bishop g5, threatening to take and queen h7 mate. So for example, if we play a Yasser move, a6, Yasser likes to play random moves to show the threat. Then takes, checkmate. Okay. Sometimes when you make a random move, it stops the checkmate. And you're like, oh, okay. So obviously and frankly, you would play h6. Then bishop h6 is the line I wanted to look at because it's exciting. G takes h6, queen takes h6. Now, what is white threatening? I don't know. So the engine says everything is equal because white has this perpetual check. Queen g5, queen h6. Check, 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 check. And white doesn't really have any other threat right now. So black could play c4, for example. And now we have to take the perpetual check or we just lose. The bishop has no square that's safe. Bishop e2, that's no good. Then there's no attack. Then I could play like bishop e4, bishop g6. I'm sure I could play other stuff too. So you have to play this perpetual. So that would be actually sort of boring. If he plays for mate, it's actually just a perpetual after h6. So Jan played bishop f4, attacking the queen. And you could move the queen anywhere and it's about the same. Play queen b6. Makes sense, put some pressure on the b pawn. And he played knight e5. He said, take my b pawn. I dare you. I double dare you. Do they speak English and what? Now, obviously, there's a very simple answer to taking the b pawn. We have rook b1 and rook takes bishop on b7. So that's a super poisoned pawn. Okay, he played rook a d8. This is an excellent move. And obviously, the rook's no good on a8. So, and what he wants to do is play rook to d4, pitting over here and threatening like knight d5 at some point, or c4, and so forth. Okay, and this is still equal. And he played rook a e1. The engine actually slightly prefers rook f e1 to rook a e1. Okay, it's not a big deal. Now, again, black has more than one move that leads to some kind of equality. The engine wants to play bishop a6 because it wants to trade off this beautiful bishop. Okay, and I agree. Now, let me go back a move because it just occurred to me white has a super aggressive move that we should look at. Knight g4 with the same idea as before. We're going to take this and play queen h7 mate. Okay, and now we can always sacrifice the exchange. Rook takes d3, stopping all of the attack. Okay, you have to take. Pawn takes. Then knight to d5, threatening the queen and the bishop. And what's funny is, I hate to say this, bishop g5 loses, so we can't do that. To f6, no, boo. Now black's winning because the bishop is attacked, and if it moves away, we have f5 attacking the queen and the knight. So like bishop d2, for example, f5, and white's going to lose a piece here. So white has to play queen g3, That's the only move in that position. Now it wants black to play h5, attacking the knight. Knight e5 loses immediately, it says, to bishop d6. And this pin is too strong, and it just says that black's winning. I guess black is threatening knight takes f4, queen takes f4, f6 again, winning the knight. Two bishops, what else? And always sack the exchange. What happens on this? That's just my personal, knight takes f4. That is really nice. And then if you take this, I check, and then I check again, and then I take this. And two bishops, what else? Okay, so knight g4 doesn't work. So rook d8 was really strong because this exchange sack comes into play. Okay, he played rook e1. He played g6. Again, the engine slightly prefers bishop a6 to trade the bishops. Okay, now in this position, if white had played another move, I would have thought, why didn't he play this move? But he did play this move. So we'll get to see what the problem is. The move that I would play with white is bishop g5. I would definitely play that. And he played bishop g5. So attacks the knight moves away, you lose the bishop. And this is all tactics. Black plays rook to d4, attacking the queen. And the idea is we vacate the d8 square for the black queen. So if white maintains this pin with f4 or g4, maintaining this attack here, we can play queen d8 and defend everything if necessary. Against g4, you can actually take on g4. And I looked at that with the engine and I just started crying. It was just too complicated. I think he would have played queen d8. Okay, so white played queen h3, which is the engine move. Now we're not really threatened here so much. Okay, so queen c7 puts pressure on the knight. And more importantly, I think it defends the bishop on e7, so my knight's not pinned anymore. Okay, b3, making sure black never plays c4. Knight h5, trying to trade pieces, and also get the f4 square for the knight. Makes sense. f4. Now, black can trade on g5 if he'd like to, and the engine says that's about equal. But he doesn't have to. Black has more than one move that equalizes. He played bishop d6. And to be frank, I really like this World Championship because I like the games. The games are really interesting, and they're sort of hard to play. There's more than one move that's probably okay. Nobody tells you that. We know because we have engines and all the grandmasters analyzing. But these games are really good. This game's great. This game, basically nobody's been better. It's just been a dynamic equality. And now, finally, stuff really starts to happen here. Okay, so far we've been playing sort of normal chess. He played c3, and the rook is semi-trapped. We don't want to play rook d5 because that's a very strange square for the rook. And so he brilliantly plays knight takes f4. That's the best move. Obviously, it threatens everything, so we have to take it. You can take either way, and it's equal either way you take it. Now, let's look at rook takes, because rook takes wasn't played. If he plays rook takes, which was not played, then black plays bishop takes e5. Now, the best move for white is amazing. And if you don't play the best move, you're lost. I would never play this move. I would never think of this move. I don't understand this move at all. So there you go. I'm a good player. Okay, I understand it a little now. Now I see bishop f6 and rook f8. Okay, I understand it now, but that's because I'm cheating by having the engine help. So this position, if you play the obvious move, let's say it's taking a rook. Taking a rook is, pretty good. Then bishop takes this rook. I mean, black's just a pawn up. And white doesn't have compensation. White's not doing anything. This pawn's attacked. His bishops are good. This bishop on d3 isn't doing anything. This is just winning for black. If white wants to keep the equality, he has to play bishop takes g6. Now, this threatens queen takes h7 mate, so we have to take it. The idea is if you take with the f pawn, I can take your rook on f8 and then take your rook. So you have to take with the h pawn. Now I take your rook, and the idea is if you take my rook, and when the bishop was on d3, I was explaining how this was good for black. But now this h pawn is gone because of bishop takes g6, h takes. So I have bishop f6, threatening mate. The truth hurts. Okay, so this is actually a forced line. Bishop is bishop takes, pawn takes, pawn takes. And now you don't take the rook allowing bishop f6. You take this. Black's down in exchange. Black has two passed pawns in the center. And the engine says this is equal. I mean, I could see taking either side. And, I wouldn't call it equal. It seems like somebody's going to win. Either these pawns will get too strong or they won't. And white has an attack on the h-file, obviously, but bishop's a thing. But the engine says, like, every move is equal. Okay, well, Jan didn't do this. Jan played the more standard bishop takes f4, okay, which is also equal. And he played rook takes f4, rook takes f4, bishop takes e5. So black sacrificed the exchange. He has a pawn for the exchange. He has the two bishops. And his king is pretty safe because this bishop is sort of hitting against a rock here. Like a rock. Yeah. So practically speaking, probably black's better because black's bishops are so strong and white's bishop is so silly. But in engine speak, it's equal. Okay, he played rook h4 because he's Jan. He wants to attack here. The engine actually prefers rook f2. Which I don't like rook f2 because put on the same diagonal as my king. Puts all my pieces on dark squares. I don't like that. Okay, and black can ignore this pawn and play rook to d8 if he'd like. And he did. So the idea is, get the analysis board up, if you take on h7, then I play rook takes d3 and the queen is overworked. The bishop on e5 is defending the mate. So if you take the rook, I take your rook, and I have two bishops for a rook, completely winning. So you can't take the h7 pawn. Now, if you're familiar with every game ever played in Zurich 53, okay, there was a game that reminds me of this game where white's attacking with his queen and two rooks on the king's side, and black defends, and eventually black gets a passed pawn on the queen's side, and he infiltrates and black wins. And I think even it was like almost like this. It was like a lot of pieces were attacking. So hopefully you guys know that game from Zurich 53. I don't remember who was playing. I want to say either Smyslov or Irva was black, but I don't remember. Thanks, Joe Tech 9. Smyslov Keres? Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah, Keres was black. That's right. Okay, so you can't take on h7. So he played bishop e4. Now the engine says you can trade bishops or play bishop a6, and it's equal either way. But a lot of people wouldn't play bishop a6 because it looks like your bishop is silly over there. So he traded. Takes. Rook to d5, defending the bishop. And again, there's one open file and black has it. So the white rooks aren't, so good. Black has an extra pawn. You could argue black's bishop is just as good as one of white rooks. You could argue it's not. If you play c4, which looks like a tactic, because if the rook moves, I take the bishop, I have bishop d4 check first. And giving my bishop the d4 square probably isn't a good idea. Yeah, now it says black is winning. Okay. So he played rook h4. Again, he wants to take the pawn on h7. Queen d6, ignoring it. and he did not take the pawn on h7. White can take the pawn on h7. The engine says it loses immediately to rook d1. And the queen can't really defend the king if it's defending the rook. And there's no threats for white because the bishop is stopping it. So, for example, I'll make some moves. Let's take, I don't know, queen takes check, king f2, queen d2 check. Let's see. Okay, the engine says this is the best move. Bishop takes c3, threatening mate. And my bishop and queen are mating you, and your queen and rook are not mating me. My bishop's actually better than your rook, because my bishop is attacking the white king and defending the black king. And the white rook is not doing either. The engine actually says queen takes c3 is the best move. Frankly, ridiculous. Okay, so that's losing. So you can't take on h7. Black has really nice domination of the center here, and black is infiltrating also. And black's king is really safe because of this bishop. Okay, he played queen e3, so he gave up on the h-file, and he's just defending everything now. The engine says black is better. Black played h5. And, you know, white's rooks are just doing nothing. White's rooks are no good. And black sacked the exchange, so it's got to be good. Black has domination of the center. Black has a pawn for his troubles. And it's very hard to find anything for white to do here. Okay, now at this point in the game, as you can see from the clock times, both players have less than 15 minutes, and we're on move 29. I was informed, I'm not saying it's true, I'm just telling you what I was told. I was told there's no increment in this match until move 60. So the first and second time control, there's no increment. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I saw on the internet. So it has to be true. Okay, so that's actual clock times. Okay, he played g3, trying to thwart this bishop. Otherwise, the rook is sort of stuck defending the h-pawn because of this battery. Okay, he played bishop f6, attacking the rook. The rook moves to c4, putting pressure on this pawn, keeping the black pieces on that pawn. Now, in this position, the engine prefers black, and it wants black to play slow and steady, like bishop g5 attacking the queen, a5, not to do very much because everything black has is like perfect, and slowly but surely try to increase his advantage. But it's time trouble, so the players got a little frisky. And Ding played h4, which is okay. And Jan took the pawn on h4. So it's getting more interesting. Now, this position, Ding, who I talked to Ding actually yesterday during the rest day, he told me once upon a time he was falling in love. And I said, yeah, but now you're only falling apart. Nothing he can do. And in this position, Ding started to play very badly. And here, black's better by playing the move bishop e5. That attacks the h-pawn, and black just does nothing. King g7, and black has this domination of the center, and white has all these weak pawns, and white's rooks aren't very good. And the engine just simply prefers black. Black's going to play king g7, bishop f4, rook d2, and eventually come in and get white, and white has to struggle to draw, according to the engines. Okay, but, you know, you can see 5 minutes for Ding, 12 minutes for Jan. So he played rook to d2, threatening queen h2 check. And white has two ways to stop this. There's the good way, and there's the Ding way. Thanks, Glaurung88. The correct way is queen to g3. After queen to g3, the engine slightly prefers white. Slightly. But he played rook e2. Now we're back to equality again. Rook d3 double question mark. This is the losing move. So if he wants to draw, he can check and then play rook to d5, or he could play rook to d5. In my opinion, this is my opinion, I need to see the press conference. Also, it doesn't mean the players are telling the truth in the press conference. So it could be if the press conference says the opposite of what I'm saying, I could still be right, although probably not. I think Ding forgot his pawn was hanging on c5. That's what I think. Otherwise, his move doesn't make any sense. He should just play rook d5 and everything's fine. And it's a 3-result game. Anything could happen. And you can see the last couple of moves, Ding's used all of his time. 45 seconds to 10 minutes. I mean, 45 seconds and it's move 33. And there's no increment. So that's not good. People on the internets were complaining after the game there should be increment and this isn't fair and so forth. Okay. All right. I'm not opinionated on that. Time control is a time control. Okay, so he played rook d3, double question mark, the worst move of the game. Queen takes c5. I mean, white just won 2 pawns. Black played h4 and white took it. Black moved his rook away from c5 and white took it. And there's no attack for black. Now white's up a pawn and an exchange. And white has a passed c pawn, and white's king isn't really as exposed as it looks. There's no way to attack the white king. So now the game, for all practical purposes, is over. White's completely winning. So rook d3, incredible blunder. Just rook d5, stopping queen c5, and position's equal. Rook d1 check, king g2. There's no way to get to the king. He tries to keep the queens on. Rook f2, attacking the bishop on f6. Rook f4, attacking the bishop again. Now if the bishop moves, rook f7. If Ding had a lot of time on his clock, he would resign. But he quickly played queen takes c3 with 3 seconds left, and then he resigned. Because after queen takes queen, bishop takes queen, rook takes f7 check, rook takes a7. We're just taking everything. So here black resigned, and he had 3 seconds left. Now obviously, the last 6 moves of the game, Ding didn't play at his usual level because he had less than a minute. So his time usage that game wasn't good. The game was really good until rook d3. Rook d3 is just a terrible time trouble blunder, and he lost the game because of 1 move. At the top level, if you make a bad move, you can lose. Now, I'm not sure this is true, but this is what I read on the internet. So you guys better double check, or you guys in the chat can say, yeah, that's right, or no, that's wrong. I was told tomorrow is a rest day. Then they're going to play a game, then have another rest day. And the reason is, I read, was they don't want to have the same person have white or black and then a rest day. They want to switch it. So the important thing is every day is a rest day. Now, I'm not saying that's true. It could be they're playing 2 games rest, and I was told the wrong thing. But, I doubt it. Yeah, the match is thanks, Trons G, for the sub. The match is half over. It's a 14-game match. That was game 7. So now they take a rest day. Then Ding will get white, and then they'll have a rest day. Or maybe they won't. Let's see, rest day, then Ding's white. Then they should play the second game and have a rest day. Because, yeah, it should be they have a rest day tomorrow. Then that's it. Then they play 2 and have rest days again. Anyway, the point of the story is, I like stories. No, the point is Ding and Jan will not play tomorrow on Wednesday. They will play on Thursday. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure I'm right. Yeah. So right, no game on Wednesday. Then they'll play the normal schedule. Thursday, Friday rest. Sunday, Monday rest, etc. Mainly etc. And so forth. Anyway, that was a really good game. And in time trouble, Ding made a terrible blunder, rook d3, and then he was just completely lost. And it's a terrible blunder because it really, I mean, did he not see queen takes c5? I guess. Man, queen takes c5, takes a pawn, threatens to trade queens? God damn. So that's too bad that he had his rook on d5 the whole game defending his c5 pawn, and then he moved it away and the guy took it. Yeah. So that game was lost definitely because Ding didn't have a lot of time on his clock. So I guess he should either play faster or only play when there's increments, whichever's funnier. All right, thanks for watching. Thanks for donating. I'll be on tonight. I'll be on Chess TV Tuesday night. And Karen will be at Music Bingo with Archer. Then she'll come at the end of the stream and we'll do puzzles and so forth. Mainly and so forth. I hope you liked the recap. I liked the game. It was interesting. And we will raise